Good afternoon and welcome back to the third in our series of 7 webcasts talking about moving up to enterprise leadership, the 7 seismic shifts. I'm joined again today by Professor Michael Watkins. Michael, thanks for being with us again in the IMD studios today. We're looking at the third shift today, which is moving from tactician to strategist. So if we boil this all down, is this just about standing back and taking a helicopter view?
So to a degree it is. I think that as you move up, automatically your worldview is going to broaden somewhat. But it really becomes terribly important when you're leading a business as a whole that you have a strategic mindset. And strategic mindset means the ability to look at the big picture. It means the ability to look out further typically than you would otherwise. It means the ability to discern those patterns that are going on in the environment and really to sort of distill them out. But your point about helicopter leadership is interesting because this is a term that was coined about Jack Welch originally, right? And the story was basically told that he would go into these business reviews and he would sort of start by taking an issue and digging down, very deep into it, like dipping down, to really kind of make himself comfortable that the team understood the foundations. But then he had the ability to pop back up like the helicopter and sort of look at the broader view. And it's that set of capability, right, that you sometimes need to drive for the details. You need to know when to do that. But it's really crucial that you be able to cruise up at a higher level and see the picture as a whole.
So you mentioned there Jack Welch, who presumably, based on everything that we've seen that he's achieved over many years, was able to be a tactician but also to stand back and be a strategist. So some people are, I guess, just naturally great strategic thinkers or great strategists. Can anybody learn to be a strategist?
So I think there is a piece of this that really is innate. I think there's a set of capabilities and linked to general intelligence that the research basically says need to be there for you to have the capacity to be a good strategic thinker. But it's also clear that you can learn to be better, right? And we can debate how much better you can get. I personally believe substantially better with the right training. So it really is a mixture of nature and nurture, as so many of these things are.
So talking about training and developing, you say there are 4 key areas that strategists need to be good at: the what, the why, the how, and the who. Yes. Take us through those. Walk us through those, please.
There's never-ending confusion about things like mission, vision, strategy, right? So for me, I've sort of tried to boil it down to a simpler set of questions, right? What is it we're going to do? That's mission, right? Fundamentally, what are we trying to accomplish here, right? How are we going to accomplish that? That's strategy, right? What are the approaches, the how that we're actually going to get this done? Who needs to be involved, right? What resources do we need to deploy? What alliances do we need to build? And then what people often miss is the why, right? Why should we get excited as a group of people about doing this, right? Which to me is the core function of vision. Vision is fundamentally answers the question why. What's inspiring about what we're doing, right? Why should I give discretionary effort out to make this happen? And I think if you can answer those 4 questions, you really go a long way to aligning your organization.
So if people are watching today and saying, well, that sounds pretty straightforward, I can think about the what, I can divide up the why and the who and the how. People who are watching today who want to step back and do a little bit of self-analysis and say, I wonder if I could be a great strategist, or maybe I'm a great strategist already. What advice would you give them?
So I look at there being sort of 3 traits that great strategists have, and I call them pattern recognition, level shifting, and mental simulation. Fancy terms, but fairly simple ideas, right? Pattern recognition. Are you able to take a complex, noisy, jumbled environment and discern what's really crucial about it, right? What are the patterns that are emerging? What are the underlying cause-effects relationships that are really making things happen here? Because without the ability to do that pattern recognition, it's virtually impossible to know what's real and what isn't, what is important and what isn't. You can't really then focus in on what's crucial. And part of what you need to do as a strategist is that, right? The second piece we've already talked about, the level shifting piece, is the ability to move from the detail to the big picture, from the current to the future, right? And to be able to do that fairly fluidly, right? There's a kind of suppleness mentally that allows you to do some of that stuff. And the third piece is mental simulation, and that's basically the ability to imagine what the reactions to your actions are going to be, right? Not to pretend that the world isn't going to react to what you do, right? So we launch a product, what's our competitors likely to do, right? What are government regulators likely to do in reaction to an acquisition bid? And given that, how should we be sort of responding? So looking forward, reasoning backward, coming up with the right actions. It's those sorts of skill sets that you really need to hone if you're going to be effective as a strategist.
So those three skill sets that you've mentioned, which sound a bit like strategic analysis, it sounds like the kind of thing that I could do in my office with the door closed and say to my assistant, don't disturb me, I'm being Mr. Strategist this afternoon. How important is communication? Does a great strategist have to be a great communicator as well?
Well, there's the old maxim that, you know, a good strategy executed brilliantly is better than a brilliant strategy executed poorly, right? And the execution of strategy basically is about communicating and aligning people, right? If you believe, as I do, that strategy is about the how, right? The reason why we have strategy is because we can't control all the actions that are going on in the organization, right? The function of strategy is to align. It's to give people guidance about when they reach a question of should we go this direction or that direction, the strategy kind of tells them, right? The right way to go is left and not right. You don't communicate strategy, how are people going to know what to do, right? And so you may have a brilliant strategy in your mind, but if you're not willing to do the hard work, and it is hard work, of communicating and communicating again and communicating some more until people really understand not just the strategy, but what it means for them, right, at the local level, then you haven't accomplished what you need to.
As an enterprise leader, can you delegate the communication to your communications team?
They play a role, right? So for any enterprise leader, when you're dealing with large organizations, there's got to be a part of your communication strategy that is to the many, right? There's also got to be a piece of it about getting your team to themselves communicate what's crucial to their teams and cascade on down through the organization. Is a good communications team an important piece of this? Absolutely, right? If you're going to produce a video, segment to describe elements of the strategy, you're going to want a good communications team. If you're going to do a weekly email, you're going to want some support for doing that. But if you aren't the driving force behind that, it's never going to work.
You touched there on the video segment or the email. We often hear people talking about elevator pitches. Mm-hmm. If I'm a great strategist, do I need to be able to communicate that in 1 minute, or is that just overblown hyperbole that we hear from many arts and parts?
Yeah, so 1 minute may be a little short, right? But there's an underlying kernel of truth here. So Bruce Henderson, who was one of the founders of the Boston Consulting Group, used to talk about strategy as powerful simplifications, right? The notion that you have to be able to distill it down into something that's relatively simple but powerful and communicate it. So if it takes me an hour to communicate our strategy, we probably have a problem, right? Because you're going to walk away from that going, a minute, that's a little short, right? But there's an intervening piece here that says concise, crystalline, powerful, simple. That's what we really need to understand.
Michael, thanks so much for sharing with us today this third seismic shift moving from tactician to strategist. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Paul.